Welcome back. President Cyril Ramaphosa has delivered his State of the Nation address, and with it, the announcement of a national state of disaster over the energy crisis. He also announced that he will be appointing an electricity minister to deal with the rolling blackouts. I am joined now by a Corruption Watch's Executive Director, Karam Singh, on this matter. Karam, thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's talk a little bit about this impact of this national state of disaster. It's received some welcoming from one court and, of course, some criticism from the other court, as we can anticipate in South Africa. But we saw when the last national state of disaster was actually proclaimed in South Africa, what happened. And you know what happened? A lot of stealing happened. A lot of enrichment happened, self-enriching at a time of crisis in the country. We can, I'm sure, understand why people will be a little bit apprehensive amongst this natural state of disaster, as well as its implications.
Yes, absolutely. I think when the president mentioned that in his speech, he spoke about part of the motivation for this would then be to allow government to move more quickly. And he spoke about, being able to take actions, regardless of existing regulations that are in place. And I think that is an absolute concern because what we saw during the COVID lockdown and the PPE crisis was that unscrupulous suppliers in collusion with officials in government were able to use relaxations in the regulatory regime to then push through irregular transactions. So, if we do see a repeat of that, then it really will be a kind of an own goal, a kind of self-defeating type of situation, because while we understand we have an electricity crisis and government needs to act boldly, it also needs to act in a way which is absolutely prudent when it comes to finances, when it comes to fiscal prudence. And we wouldn't want to see a repeat of the kind of PPE debacle and see this then as a kind of new modality through which we could see corrupt, fraudulent, and irregular transactions.
Yeah, and if anything, history always serves as the best learning or the best teacher of what we're to anticipate as the country. His move to announce a Minister of Electricity, but based in the presidency, obviously has been welcomed as something that maybe motivates the president to keep quite close eye on how we salvage this energy crisis. But then there's also been the conversation around appointing yet another politician to come and do the work. We've seen several politicians and ministers attempt to do the work, and they failed. It doesn't also change the fact that the very same president, when he was deputy president of the country, was appointed by then then President Jacob Zuma to oversee the war room in 2014. And that didn't salvage the electricity crisis. So appointing another politician to do the work when you yourself as the president were also appointed once upon a time to do the very same work.
No, I think you point to what we see as the obvious challenges here, and it actually draws one to question what's really motivating this decision. Is it a decision motivated by what we think is going to be most efficient and most expedient and most effective, or is it a decision which is motivated by satisfying different political interests within the ruling party and within the cabinet and the ruling elite? I mean, the president's office is already significantly overloaded with a number of responsibilities in terms of the work of the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation. One appreciates the president wanting to keep these types of functions close to him. But, as in terms of what you've pointed out, it's not clear that this would lead to greater efficiencies, that this would be a different approach than the approach that we've seen up to this point. And we have a bloated cabinet, and in the same moment where the president talks about bringing in a new minister, he also talks about the need to consolidate other portfolios in order to ensure that we have some fiscal savings down the line. So, the devil will be in the detail. I think we don't want to completely pour cold water on this before it happens and say that it's not going to work. But I think based upon some of the issues that you've raised, based upon past practice and based upon existing challenges around efficiencies in government, it's not clear that this is going to be the type of proposal which is going to take us to a new place.
Karam, what would you like to see happen as Corruption Watch?
Well, I mean, I think obviously there needs to be a focus on this as a national crisis. I'm not sure that we need to have a national state of disaster to deal with it. I think if we are going to bring in a new personnel into the cabinet, that needs to be done in a moment where there also is the consolidation of other portfolios. So we have other kinds of efficiencies. We have an absolutely bloated cabinet that hasn't been able to deliver on its mandate. So, we need to see, from the presidents, from the cabinet, a kind of real commitment to fiscal discipline in a moment where we are increasing our commitment to law enforcement and the fight against corruption. So as we give more money to the MPA, more money to the investigating directorate, we also need to find savings elsewhere in government so that we can have that kind of fiscal responsibility and ensure, that if we are mobilizing funds to deal with a crisis like this, that we have the Auditor General in place to do real-time audits. We even consider mobilizing the SIU and its forensic capacity to also provide oversight by way of an investigative proclamation. I think with some of those additional safeties in place, we could have a bit more comfort.
Karam Singh, much appreciated for